YouTube channel near you.
Well, what do you say there, Catherine? Lulu, Woo Rider. Welcome, Val, Jean, Tofa and Tara, Park, Crystal, Denise.
Oh my God.
Welcome, everybody. Gary Spikes. Can't forget about you. Oh, wow. Walsis, nice to have you. Nancy, welcome to the show. Lauren is tuning in with us. So, we have something interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Jana.
I got to make sure I like it. I just liked it.
Yes, don't forget, everybody, if you are not a member of the Bigfoot Outlaw gang, what's up? Make sure to like, subscribe, and tune in, everybody. Ain't that right? Sandra, nice to have you. Hey, Michael. What's going on? Barb, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I have an interesting little tidbit to share. Grizzly, you and I have been so busy backstage. Last night, our show was so fun, loud, and boisterous, right? That apparently it gathered a little audience right outside of my window of my office.
What?
Yeah. So, check out my page. And I even was so excited, I uploaded a video to YouTube. Apparently there were some. Yeah.
Shut the front door.
Yep. When I'm using my reading glasses, so I can't see, like the distance. So I wouldn't even be able to see. When I took off my reading glasses and stand up, I'm like, wait a minute, that literally looks like something big is standing there and I could see movement. Then I thought, hey, thanks, Nancy. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I thought, well, I don't want to leave. Catherine, my gosh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine.
You guys are so awesome. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I was able to get it a small, short little video. I went to get my new binoculars that are high powered, and it was gone by that time. But the video was pretty cool.
We talked about some high power.
Yeah.
People flip out when I do that on the show, but I had to. Brown Barber fella. So I've been getting messages all day about the show last night. They're like, I had to watch it like 2 or 3 times. So yes, I'm still messing with my lights in the studio, trying to figure everything out.
Face still hurts. I was laughing so hard. It was wow. It was great.
You should have been in my tent. It sounded like Godzilla was getting ready to attack me, everybody. Anyways, Karen Taylor, nice to have you on the show. I'm still trying to look and figure out where my camera. Look at my eyes. What the hell? I'm getting possessed. Poor Mike won't want to look at it. Anyways, my light in the studios are not. There we go. That's still. Anyways, but yeah. So who we got going on today?
Today we have Michael Kameron from the UK. He is an author. He is a lifetime, right, of paranormal and alien encounters. He is the author of High Strangeness, a lifetime of alien and paranormal encounters. A nice guy. We just met him. He's such a great guy. So let's bring him in. Everybody's waiting to hear from him.
Come on down, kind sir. How you doing?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Wonderful.
Michael, great. Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome.
Absolutely. So tell us all about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in a strict Irish Roman Catholic family. I was born in the United Kingdom, in London, in the East End of London. And for all other purposes, I'm an ordinary person that just happens to have alien abduction and paranormal type experiences. I was raised in in actually the school grounds of a Roman Catholic junior school. My childhood home was in the actual grounds of this school. So my book focuses primarily on in the house itself and in the grounds of the school, where a lot of the activity that I had, along with my brother Sean, who's mentioned in my book, who's 2 years older than me, we had a few experiences together as children. So that's me, really.
Welcome to the show. It was an honor to have you to come on. You're so well sought after. So thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what was your age when this started? How old were you when you had your first encounter?
Well, the experiences for me seemed to start when I was a baby. in the cot. So, obviously I don't have memories of this, but when I was growing up, my parents did tell me of a few things that happened when I was a baby. I mean, I was born premature. I was an unexpected child, so I was in hospital quite a long time. But when I did eventually come out and come back to what would be then my childhood home until I was 17, my parents said, that there was a lot of activity where the cot was placed in one of the rooms. There was, what would they call balls of light, what you would call orbs, that would be flying around. Both my parents and one of my other brothers. I got three brothers. Two of them are a lot older than me and Sean. When we were basically at school, they were already starting their jobs. So there's a big gap in the age difference between us. But my parents was telling me, that there was orbs or balls of light flying around. And at one time, my parents did see what would be now a typical grey standing, looking down at me in my cot. And when it was seeing it vanished. But they said that the events in the house didn't appear to happen until I actually come back from the hospital and, in the cot. So there was a lot of activity, what we now call poltergeist activity in the house, cold spots in areas, usually in the areas of a door, in the corner of a door, where there wouldn't be previously any, cold spots. My mum, whenever she was in the house alone, she had disembodied voices calling her name. When she could feel a presence around her, when she turned around, there was never nothing there. I mean, at some point, it scared her so much when she was in the house alone. She'd run out to the house, to the school where my dad was to tell him. There was objects that would move around and then suddenly reappear somewhere else in that house. But there was a lot going on. But when the activity started to get a little bit more sinister, my brother Francis at the time was sleeping in the bed, and we had just beside the bed there was a large oak wardrobe that was really heavy to move, and this just flipped over on top of the bed, which nearly hit him in the face. It's on top of him. It took like my brother and my dad to get back. So, and this was full up. It wasn't empty. It would, even if two people were holding it, it would be quite difficult to push over. So he was okay. He was just shocked.
Oh my gosh.
My brother Kevin at one time as well was coming up the stairs, and something rushed past him and pushed him. He felt something on him, pushed him down the stairs, and he went tumbling down the stairs. He hit his head, but again,
oh my gosh,
he wasn't injured, but he was he was quite shocked. So it was only then that my parents sought after. They went to the church and they asked for help. I mean, my dad, he was quite an interesting man, because on reflection, on the outer appearances, he was just like an ordinary man, like a schoolkeeper that looks after a school. But he had a lot of interesting friends. My dad was a Grand Knights Templar. So and when I was growing up in my household as a child, most of the people that come into my house as adults, they were high-ranking police officers who were Freemasons. They were military personnel, and they were people from the Church of Rome in the Vatican. So my dad had a lot of friends in high places, but to look at him, he was just an ordinary person on outer appearances, but obviously there was a lot more going on with him. I mean, he served in the Royal Air Force.
Wow.
During World War II, he was a flight engineer, and my mum built Lancaster bombers in the munitions factories. She went into the factories when she was 14, and she was building basically weaponry for the Air Force. But because she was very intelligent, she was given the opportunity to work in the offices where the men were. I mean, now it's not a big deal, but back then for a woman, it was to go in and share this space with the men.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Impressive.
But what I discovered was, when I was writing the book as well, is that the blueprint of the grounds of where my childhood house was built was actually on the burial grounds of a Roman leper site. So where they took the Romans who had leprosy out of the cities, and it was actually a graveyard under there containing these particular individuals that suffered with this disease. So, you know, sometimes, you know, the location itself is important.
Sure. Absolutely. Wow.
When did you find out about the history about that?
Sorry?
How did you find out about the history about that?
I looked under, because in the area that I grew up in, it was in Tower Hamlets, and Tower Hamlets is basically a stone throw away from the Tower of London, where the crown jewels are kept. So,
Wow.
and I remember when I was at school, I had a boy sat next to me, and his dad was one of the beefeaters that look after the Tower of London. So he used to sneak me in to the back door so I could go in.
Oh my God. Wow.
Wow. And on the other side is the City of London. So it's quite easy to, you know, find information about this particular area, because the Tower of London is full of, you know, Roman history. So, and the area that I grew up in, it was actually, the area was a stone throw away again from the infamous Jack the Ripper, where he carried out all of his, you know, his murders. So I was born in Whitechapel Hospital, which is also the home which was the Elephant Man, the story of the Elephant Man. So he was their famous guest. So that was the hospital I was born in.
Interesting. Wow.
It's a lot
do
of
you
history.
think that do you know if any graves were disturbed when your home was being built, your parents' home?
I don't actually. No, that's a good question. No, I don't. My dad actually worked in the old school, which was in Chamber Street. That's one of the areas where the infamous Jack the Ripper struck one of his victims. And it was just opposite that, under a railway bridge. And then when this school, which would then become my childhood home, and the junior school, which I attended with Sean, that was the new school. So, you know, it's possible that happened.
Okay. Yeah. I was just, interested. This is so interesting, Michael. Oh my gosh. Wow.
So there is quite a big history and bloody history surrounding it. Also, the area of where the house was as well was one of the prime location of the Blitz during World War II, where they bombed basically the whole of London. So this is one of the targets that was hit quite a lot.
Wow.
I remember seeing an old picture of it as well, and there was actually only one building left standing.
Oh my goodness!
Out of the whole of it, you know, it's all bombed. Wow. And so if someone walked out the door, there was nothing else left.
So quite a history, right? Like of just like you said, bloody and chaos. Wow.
I mean, sometimes I wonder if when we have a large amount of, you know, an area what's got a lot of violence or it's seeing a lot of bloodshed, I wonder sometimes if that in a way opens up what would be, you know, a portal. Maybe all of this carnage pushes through, you know, the fabric of time, opens up a doorway, allowing other types of phenomena to interact with our world.
Makes sense.
You know, creates a rip through time. And, you know, maybe all of these other dimensions that seem to, you know, crisscross together, maybe it opens up something and they just walk through.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Definitely. Do your parents, before we get in, because I quickly want to get into your encounters, do your parents have any idea? So you said this all started with you, they believe. Is that right? I mean, when you were born, do they have any idea why? Any thoughts, or, you know, maybe, I don't know, you know, just some guesses, thoughts?
Well, you know, a lot of people that I've spoken to on other podcasts, they seem to, you know, have an inkling that maybe my parents in some ways were involved in some of the activities that happened to me. You know, I can't prove it. It's mere speculation, really. I mean, I wouldn't like to think that was the case with some of the other experiences I've had in the course of my life. But the one thing I would say is that there is a question mark on whether or not I am adopted.
Oh, wow.
And what made you think that?
because when my brothers, my two elder brothers, were telling me that when I was born, before I was brought back to the house, my birth was sworn to secrecy. They were sworn to secrecy. They were told never to reveal anything about my birth to anyone. And then when I asked my when I asked my brothers now, they won't tell me anything. You know, it's just a normal question to ask. But they said that they won't say nothing because they swore to my parents they would never tell me anything.
Wow.
That is. Wow.
And then when I've had some psychic, readings before, there's indications again. One medium told me that I may never know where I come from. So there's like little things there. It might be true, it might not be true, but there seems to be some sort of unusual experiences about my birth.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. And I mean, that would kind of make sense if that is the fact.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me what's the big deal, but for me as an adult, it's closure, really. You're always wondering if that's the case. And then it gives you another, to some degree, it gives you another take on, is it something to do with the, genetic bloodline?
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
With our ancestry, and with where you come from and their bloodlines. So if one of those of my parents wasn't my parent,
mm-hmm.
It's possible there are other links there that I don't know about. Right.
Absolutely. Wow. Are your parents both? Are they passed? Are they deceased? Or are they alive?
Yeah, my dad died when I was 15. Okay. Suddenly, unexpected heart attack. And my mum died a little later from breast cancer. She was in a coma, goodness. And then she just passed. But most of my family have passed, really. Mm-hmm. The grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, they're basically all gone.
So there's really nobody that you can.
No, not really. I experienced death quite young in my life. Quite a lot was happening. Quite a lot of my, my family died sort of all together. Just a little, maybe a few weeks apart. It all sort of happened all at once. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, that's traumatic. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you were very young. Oh. So then, all right. So then, you experienced this as a baby, and then what are your memories? When does that start of what you started to experience?
A lot of the activity around me that I do remember, and which I've wrote about in my book, although there is some sort of fractured memory with some of it, is around the age of 4. And this seems to be quite classic with other abductees. The activity seems to begin around 4 or 5 years old, and then it accelerates a little bit more, I think, as we begin to grow as a child. Mm-hmm. So that's from where I started to have a lot of activity with, what would be, I guess, the infamous greys, what we've now come to be called the greys. Mm-hmm. But one of my first memories, I would say, would probably be with what would be the Nordics type beings, and these are what in my book I call invisible friends.
Okay.
So with these, I remember a time when I was in the bedroom and I would have communication with these particular beings. At the time, you don't really think much of it as a child. You just think it's, guess it's normal. But,
right.
And but these particular beings, they were a lot different from the adults around me. They were a lot taller, very athletic build, quite good looking. The classical long blonde hair, like piercing blue eyes. And the outfits that they wore were blue, and they were, what would be like fitting to your body, really.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I remember one time I was talking to them. I was sitting on the bed and I was talking to them, and I could hear my mum coming up the stairs, and I knew that the door was closed, the bedroom door, and I knew she was listening outside of the door, because when she moved her feet, the weight of her feet was making the floorboards crack beneath her, so I knew she was there. Yeah. And I remember speaking to them, but they didn't speak to me like we are talking now, vocally. It was in the mind, you could hear it, or in the head. You could just hear, you could feel like an energy around your head, and then you could hear the voice. you know.
Mhm.
And I remember my mum then opened the door, and I turned away from my friends, and I looked at my mum, and she sort of looked at me, you know, with a nod look, and she sort of said to me, you know, who are you talking to? And I then turned back to my friends, and I said, my friends. I turned back to them, and they were no longer there. And the windows that ran along, you know, where the wall was, the bedroom wall, you know, they were closed, so I couldn't understand where they'd gone. And then I turned back to my mum, you know, and my mum was still looking at me. And then she come in and kneeled down beside me, and because she could see that I was a little bit confused and a little bit
Mhm.
afraid. And she, you know, reassured me that I'm sure that they'll come back.
Oh, okay.
And then she, you know, went back down the stairs. But you know, one of the things that I never told them at the time is that they wasn't children that were coming to see me; these were adults. And I remember other times, especially with the female, that we would play games. You know, a lot of the time we play follow the leader. So I would be following them somewhere and going somewhere with them. So I had a lot of contact with these particular beings over the course of my childhood, at probably aged 4. And there was
What?
another time when I was downstairs in the living room. My mum was making some lunch in the kitchen, and I was playing with my toy cars. You know, what would be Matchbox toy
Mhm.
cars, which
The
were
real
quite
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were cool. And I was playing with them, and then I had a feeling in my head that I should go upstairs to to my parents' bedroom. And
Mm.
again, it was this feeling. You know, at first I ignored it, you know, and then but the feeling sort of becomes stronger, and it was almost like you know, something influencing me. And then so I put my cars down. My mum didn't notice, and I then went up the stairs. So I went up the stairs to my mum and dad's room. You know, this is, and I remember standing in the room, and I felt a strong impression on me that I shouldn't move, I shouldn't leave the room because somebody's coming. And then, you know, it didn't take long for one of the two of the individuals that I see in the room before, you know, talking to me when my mum come in. He was the tall male. He come in, and he, you know, he was taller than me, and he was looking sort of down into my eyes. He didn't say anything, but he was looking into my eyes, and I was looking into his. And it felt at the time, you know, it actually felt like I entered into an altered state of consciousness. So it felt like the whole environment, you know,
Oh, wow.
suddenly went quiet. You know what
Mhm.
the you know, I describe it as the investigative researcher Jenny Randall's coined the Oz factor. You know, where your immediate environment and everything in it suddenly
Mhm.
vanishes. It's almost like you're in a cocoon, a space of your own. So
Mhm.
there was a space set up between me and this individual,
Mhm.
and outside of it, nothing outside of it existed.
Mhm.
Um, and so it felt like at the time he was giving me some information. He was taking something from me, and I was
Oh.
giving it to him when he's
Mhm.
looking in my eyes. And it felt like there was an exchange of energy between us. You know, you know, for a long time, I didn't really understand what that was. But I think there's a few, you know, a few fear ideas what it could be. But then, you know, after a little while, I don't know how long it was, but it felt like a long time. But when that feeling of that altered state vanished, he was gone, and I was left there sort of disorientated. I actually felt really, really scared.
Mhm.
It's almost like, you know, you're coming out of this zombie like state. And I
Mhm.
remember running as fast as I could down the stairs to reach my mum to tell her, you know, but you know, people say that these particular beings, that they're positive, they're benevolent. But you know, if that was the case, why was I afraid? And I was afraid around them quite a lot of the time when I
Oh.
had interactions with them. But I don't know the reason why. I mean, it's possible I was a child and I didn't understand. There was some
Mhm.
different, you know, it's possible it's that. But I think there could have been other things involved with their activities with me, that I don't remember. Um,
Right.
because it was only a little while after that that I started to encounter then. They seemed to vanish from my life. I didn't see them no more. But then once they vanished, it was then when I started to have the encounters with the greys. And the encounters I had with the Greys were never good. They were never nice encounters. You know, they were bordering more on what you would describe as torture and other types of you know, experiences. So my experiences with them were never good. And even today, as an adult, the experiences that I had with these particular beings never left me. It was only like last year I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and that's a result of having experiences, multiple experiences of abuse. And I did have this with these particular beings.
Oh my God.
I mean, I did learn much later on that they were, as a child, as a baby, they were interested in my DNA. That is something that they were very interested in. They did take my DNA when I was 4 years old. I was taken on board the ship. They took my DNA. And also they did take something from me that I would need as an adult. I learned much later on some information that was brought back with me as a spirit in for this lifetime, and my journey in this lifetime was removed on purpose so that I would face difficulties in my life, so that the people that I would be meant to meet in the course of my life, which would be, you know, I guess spiritual people, would stop. I wouldn't meet them, and I would have hardship. I know I've learned this from you know, going within, but also from various other individuals that can look into the Akashic records. So they're all saying the same thing as well, that this information was deliberately taken to cause you harm.
That's awful.
And that was at 4 years old. They did this.
My gosh! And you recall?
I remember the ship. I remember being dragged, literally screaming as a 4-year-old boy, out of my wits' end, and they didn't care less what I was doing. And you know, there was many times like this when I was a child that these things took me, you know, and you know, sometimes you didn't think you'd be brought back.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
You know? Because even now, you know, even as an adult, you know, they can come back for you and they can take you. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be brought back. Most people are brought back, but there's always that question mark.
Yes, yeah. We have some questions for you.
Do you know your blood type?
I don't know. I need to sort that out.
Yeah, I was wondering too if your RH factor, if you're positive or negative. There is, where is that? I'm sorry. Oh, Michael, do you know, did they put a chip in you? Do you have or a track or anything? Do you have any?
I have got marks on my body. I mean, I can go to that in a little bit, but I have got marks on my body that are, you know, quite bad burns from this.
This is so terrible, you poor thing.
You know, you got the classical nosebleeds after some of the encounters you have as a child. And a lot of, I think you'll find a lot of abductees as well. When they're children, they seem to have more than the usual amount of illnesses. When I was a child, I had everything you could get and lots of illnesses. And when I've spoken to other abductees, you know, from all over the world, they say the same things when they were children. They seem to have these unusual illnesses, you know. And I mean, I remember I had scarlet fever. And when I had scarlet fever, I went blind with it.
Oh, wow.
And literally my doctor at the time, he said it's really, really rare for that to happen. And my brother Sean got it, but nothing happened with him. I was actually in bed for months, blinded. I couldn't see at all. My sight went, but luckily it come back.
Wow.
And I'm wondering now, you know, now as an adult, I don't know, again, it's speculation, but are these illnesses in some way connected with the abductions?
Yes.
You know, it's quite possible. I mean, I can't say for sure. I don't know, but it's things that you think about in the course of your life. Yeah.
Yes. We had a question. Was it a triangular ship that you were?
Wasn't. No,
it wasn't. Okay.
No. I know the ships you mean. I've seen those particular ships, literally over the rooftops of where I was living, not here, but in another area of the UK. back in 2013, 14.
And what
So
did that ship look like? What did that?
these are the, what would be classical black triangular ships.
Okay.
With the lights on either on the 3 points and a light in the center. So, but these ones, I've got an interesting story with some of these actually, which I can share with you later when looking through a scope.
Oh, interesting.
About
well,
them,
before we just have one, and then I want you to get into whatever. Do you? Denise wants to know, Michael, by any chance, do you have psychic abilities?
I've always had these type of abilities since I was a child. When I was a child, I was able to see the aura, the electromagnetic field around us.
Okay.
I was able to manifest. So if I thought about something, 2 days later it would manifest. It may not manifest in the way that I wanted it to, but it would appear.
Okay.
And again, I've spoken to other people, abductees, that have had that ability as a child to manifest. And at one time I was taken by my parents. I don't know what happened with this, but I was taken to might have been an hospital, I don't know, but I was tested in front of men and women in the white lab coats because I was able to move objects without touching them. So I was able to do telekinesis as a child. I was able to move.
Wow.
So because my parents they saw I could do this, they obviously spoke to somebody. They've then referred me to go to be tested. And I remember having to move these objects on the table in front of these, whoever they were, men and women. All I know is that they were in white lab coats. And I don't know what happened with that. But again, in my book, I do have a story in my book, like an experience which I put under surveillance booth, which again I will tell you about, which is more, I think, in line with the military side of it.
Interesting.
Okay. We had a comment that they may have. Do you think that they may have damaged your immune system?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of trouble with my immune system. I've had for a long time, and it's, I've been tested by doctors who don't know what's wrong with it, so it is, yeah, there's something definitely wrong with it.
Okay. And then we'll just one more question before, I want you to get into whatever you want to speak about. Have you had any encounters with any types of cryptids other than aliens?
I did have an encounter with, let me see if I got it in my book, what I called it. Yeah, with Spring Hill Jack, this creature that roamed around Victorian London during the 18th century. He was at one time mistaken for Jack the Ripper, but apparently from what I could tell, he's never actually killed anyone. He just terrorized mostly women during that time. But this particular, whether it was a man who was using some type of advanced technology at the time, maybe a mad scientist, or if it's a creature, but it was often the one that I see was actually in the grounds of the school where I was actually having a bath at the time, and I went into my parents' room to dry off, and I was standing near the window. We had a net curtain on the window. I felt something watching me from outside. So, as a child, I was really sensitive to that type of, phenomena. And I remember pulling up the net curtain and looking out, but on the school building in the foreground, there was I could see this shape of a figure sort of kneeling on the edge of what would be, the bricks to the top of the roof. And then I see it basically, it leaked from this big building onto what would be the garage, which was just adjacent to the house. And it was just like kneeling. It was kneeling down, and it had its head down, but it had what looked like two big wings, on top of it.
Oh my gosh!
There and there, like the Mothman, a bit like that.
Oh,
and it, and it had claws on its fingers that I could see, and it also had red eyes, burning red eyes, no whites, just red.
Oh, wow.
And literally when I was looking at it, I'm not sure if it was there or if I entered it again into an altered state and was sharing some sort of space with some sort of creature that happened to be there, and I was just happened to see it. So I'm not sure if it was there physically, but what it did do is, though, when I did see it, it was a brief moment when I see it. But what it did then is basically leapt from the garage roof right onto this other building, literally a big leap, like one leap with its wings up onto this other roof, and it turned around and kneeling again, and it was just looking back at me, and then it just went. So, but when I was investigating it, there was a lot of occurrences that happened all over London. I mean, some of the earlier ones, the much later ones, happened. It was in the 18th century, but there have been sightings of these in literally 2019 of this same creature, also being chased by the police,
Wow.
cornered by the police, and just vanishes from a space where there is no way out of this building. The police in the UK know about this particular creature. There are records of it.
Wow.
So that is one creature that I did have some sort of brief contact with at the time. And I knew nothing about this creature. It was only, again, when I was researching my book, areas of topics that I didn't have no familiarity with. It would be me like, I'm looking into Bigfoot or the Dogman, I'd have to go and research, But so this particular creature, I didn't know what it was. And it was only when I was looking through my book, researching, that I come across stories of this particular creature throughout history, which was interesting.
And you said Spring Hill Jack. That's
right? Yeah, Spring Hill Jack.
Wow. So, okay. All right.
So Sandra wants to know: have you ever seen ghosts?
I have seen ghosts. I've seen, yes. I've actually had I had an encounter at one time with my dad who had passed as well. So on this particular occasion, I remember it was a hot summer's night in the house where I grew my childhood home. My dad had not long passed. I was still grieving. I felt a little bit guilty. I wasn't sure, for a long time I felt it was my fault that he died, because on the night before he died, we had a really, really bad argument, and the next day he was dead. So when I was getting up for school, my mum come into me and said that your dad has died. And, that was the last time I saw him after that argument, was he passed. So for a long time at 15, it sort of, it was in my mind, did I cause him to die? Because we had that bad argument. He had a massive heart attack in the early hours of the morning. So that stayed with me for quite a while. But then on one occasion, when I was laying on my bed, I actually see him appear to me, and he was dressed in the way that he was normally dressed when he was always booted and suited when he was alive, especially for his job. He was well dressed, and he appeared to me like this, and I could see his face, and I could see his suit and his trousers, but I couldn't see his ankles or his feet. That just wasn't there. And he just looked at me and he smiled. And then after a few seconds, he vanished.
Wow.
And I think he was coming to possibly say to me, it wasn't your fault.
Yes.
And don't think that way. So that was a nice experience, to have. But another experience, if I may tell you, is I had an experience outside of the body. So this wasn't an NDE, a near-death experience. This was an out-of-body experience. So I remember coming out of my body, and I remember passing through a rainbow, a tunnel of light. So normally this is more associated with near-death experiences, from what we understand. And I remember traveling through outside of my body through this huge tunnel, which I call Rainbow Tunnel. But inside the light, inside each of the colors on the right-hand side, as I was walking through it, I could see faces of people. Wow. And these were spirits. So these were spirits of people that have passed over. And I believe they're people from my family bloodline that obviously I don't remember. But they were smiling at me. But as I walked further along this huge tunnel of light, it was quite beautiful to look upon. And it was a lovely experience. I could see my dad again at the end of it.
Wow.
And I walked over to him and he just looked at me and he smiled. And they said, it's your time to go now. So then I immediately felt myself, my consciousness, coming back into my body. And I was woke up in the bed. But I've always remembered that.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
That's
that was
pretty neat.
a good experience.
Hi, Tammy. Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, you talk about your bloodline, you talk about certain things. Have you ever thought about the possibility of mixed DNA?
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think it's something again that a lot of people speak about. I suppose you know there's lots of different possibilities to why we are taken. I mean, you know, you obviously wonder why are you taken when other people are not taken? What is it about you that they're interested in? I mean, but one thing I like to point out though that I think is important is that, you know, I often stress on podcasts, I don't consider myself special. I don't consider myself chosen. You know, if anything, a lot of the experiences I've had are a curse. You know, unfortunately, it's unfortunate for me to say that, but it's true. You know, when you've experienced the type of phenomena that I've had since a child and it as going on as an adult, you really don't want it. You know, it's, you know, life in itself can be hard, let alone with these type of experiences. You just don't want them. You know, if anything, you know, I know it is high strangeness and we got, you know, lots of type of phenomena that's occurring, you know, but when it's not very nice, you don't want it. You know, you want the positive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because some people do, you know, somebody, when I went somewhere last year, you know, there was a lady there and she wanted to know about my experiences and she was quick to say, you know, you're lucky, Michael, you know, you've been chosen by these beings to, and I had to point out to her, I wasn't rude, but I had to correct her and just tell her that, you know, I'm not special. I'm just an ordinary guy and a child, but just happens to have experiences of this type that I don't really know the answers to.
Yes. And it certainly would seem like a, you know, like a curse to you with all this trauma. And
I mean, the only thing you can do with it is that you can take the trauma to some degree and use it in a positive way. So you're taking the bad and you're pushing it to one side, but you're taking some part of it that's good and using it in a positive way. In the way I used it, you know, is to write a book and is to speak about my experiences and to help others that may be, you know, frightened of this type of phenomena. So you're doing good then. So you know, you're taking the bad and the good.
yeah, helping. So what experiences did you want to share with us?
I can talk to you about any of those experiences. I mean, I've had encounters at a very young age with the infamous MIBs,
Oh, okay.
the Men in Black.
Mhm.
But on one of the experiences I will tell you about is with me and Sean. So it was a hot summer's day, and with the school at the time was on holiday. It was a summer holiday, 6 weeks. And, you know, my dad at the time had been in the school with the cleaners and, you know, doing whatever he does in that job at the time. And when he come back to the house, me and Sean decided we'd go into the school ground, into the school itself. There was no one in there, you know. So we went over there to play. And I remember at the time we were going through what would be like the school corridor, and there was inside toilets there, the boys and the girls. And we decided to play, you know, hide and seek. So I went off to hide and Sean went off to count to 10 or something like that. And when he was counting, it suddenly went quiet and I couldn't hear him. And at the time I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, you know, is he wants me to come out so he can see where I'm hiding and jump out on me like the big brother scaring the younger brother. So, which he often did. And I did come out eventually because I couldn't hear him counting still. But when I come out, I walked along to where would be, you know, the secretary's office. And in front of there was 2 brown swing type doors. And they had that metal wiry glass in the top and the bottom of the door. And this led through, there was a little space, another like sort of corridor, and then there was 2 more doors that led into what would be the hall where the gymnasium equipment was. And I could see Sean standing just in one place, one spot, and he was again almost like a zombie-like state, but he was just staring at the time into the hall, looking at something, and he said to me, "What's that? What is it?" And his voice was trembling. So when I walked across to where he was standing, I looked at where he was pointing into the school hall. Next to the piano, it was like an unusual sight, but there was actually a strange-looking being standing there that was very tall. He had big black eyes, spindly arms, literally down past its knees.
Oh.
And, what would now be, I guess, like a tall white grey. But if I was to look back at any images of the closest that I could come to it, and there would be just a few changes to it, would be the type of being from Close Encounters of the Third Kind that comes from underneath the ship, the Elder. But just a few changes to what it looks like. But that's the closest I could come to it. And at the time, I must point out at the time, Close Encounters didn't appear in the UK when me and Sean were having these experiences, and we were never showing anything like that. In actual fact, in the UK during the 1970s, we had TVs that just had 3 channels.
Right.
And the children, me and Sean, we acted as the remote control for the parents to turn these channels over.
Yes, we
did. So but we were actually very sheltered as children. The only activity we had was either in the school or actually in the church, which was up the road. So if we were to see anything, you'd think it'd be Jesus, because that's what we learned. We were strict Roman Catholics. So we were, but at the time we were we were looking at this creature, and again, we had this feeling of being inside a cocoon, inside some space that only us 3 shared. And I remember us staring, and again, we were almost like, we were like almost solid. We couldn't move. A paralysis. We had that. And I actually come out of this before Sean did, but when I come out of it, and I could see Sean still sort of in this state, he come out of it when I was calling his name. But this particular being, where it wasn't there no more. And again, we had this feeling of fear, both of us, and we both were running away in terror from this particular spot. We don't know what happened. We felt that there had been some sort of time that that we missed. And I remember running.
That was not to interrupt, but Denise did ask, did you ever lose time when they visited? And you feel like this is a yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we did. I mean, me and Sean did have a lot of experiences where we went into these altered states, but when we were in these altered states, there was time that went past. So something happened between those times, what we were looking at this being, and one of the things with the Greys is that they never turn up for no reason at all. They don't just come and say hi. They come because they're going to take you. This is what I've learned over the period of time that I've had these type of experiences. So me and Sean run back to the house, but before we would have to go down a staircase that led out to the main doors. But before we reached the bottom of the stairs, our dad was actually coming back into the school. And so when my dad reached the top of the stairs, we both, more Sean than me, were trying to tell him there's somebody in school, Dad. There's somebody in the school. And Sean actually said to him, they're not human. But my dad was looking at both of us to see if we were just pulling his leg, having a laugh with him. But he could see that both of us were deadly serious, and we all scared as well.
Wow.
And he went to have a look, obviously not for something I would say non-human, but obviously thinking that there's an intruder in the school. So he picked up, I remember, an object, harmed himself with this object, and he went looking. He told us to wait where we were until he come back. And then I remember he did come back eventually, and he said, the doors were all locked. There was no windows broken, none opened, all rooms empty. So he didn't really know what to make of it, I don't think. But then we went back, and he just said for us to stay close to the house. But one of the things I would say is that my parents had this a lot more from me than Sean, that we were coming to them and saying, Dad or Mum, we've had this has happened, that's happened, you know. So, you know, there was they were, and they didn't really say that it was, they didn't really say there was, you know, that it was our imagination. They didn't really say what it was, but they didn't actually reject it either. So that was
so that's very strange, right? Because usually when you go to parents, they're like, stop, that's enough.
And I was
Right?
raised in a strict Catholic home, and I mean, it was like, don't you know, I couldn't talk about anything like this. It was all, it's everything's, you know, is in my mind. It's demonic, you know. It's so that's
great. I know what that's like.
You know, that they were at least open-minded enough not to, you know. But
I mean, when I had that encounter with my dad, and he appeared to me, you know, as a little young and foolish, but at the time I went and, you know, I spoke to my GP. He was actually, my dad was Irish. He was from Dublin. So, and the family doctor that we had, he'd been in the military like my dad. He knew my dad. They were friends, and he was from Dublin. And he said to me, you know, how are you getting on? You know, because I was grieving and everything. And how are you feeling? And I said to him, well, I see my dad. And he said, what do you mean? What do you mean you saw your dad? He said, and I said, he appeared to me in the bedroom. And he said, well, that can't be true, because when you're dead, you're dead. And I obviously knew that wasn't true, because I always knew that, you know, you survive death. Your consciousness goes somewhere else, and you survive death, you know. And because I was challenging him, he didn't like it. So the next day, I was sitting in the living room, and I was sat on the chair reading a book. Suddenly, the phone started to ring. You know, my phone was on one of the dial types, you know, on the wall. It was sat on the wall. And my mum come from upstairs, and she answered the phone, and I could hear her speaking to someone. And it was my doctor. And he was actually saying to her, well, look, you know, your son is, you know, having, you know, he's seeing things that are not there. He said, so what I'd like to do is I want to section him under the Mental Health Act. And have him removed from the house for his own safety, because, you know, the things that he's having are obviously not true, and they're affecting him. And we'd like to take him away for a little while and examine him. So they were going to lock me up. But I could hear my mum saying, no, he's not like that. He has these type of experiences. So, you know, she knew I was quite sensitive to, you know, these type of energies. And so I could hear her I could see her like wrapping the cord around her hand, getting annoyed. And then she, you know, she said to him, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. And I could hear him saying to her, you know, that if he wanted, he could come by force and take me without her permission. You know,
that
back then,
correct.
You know, you could. And so I was like really frightened, because at the same time, on one hand, my dad had died, my two aunts had died, my dog had died, all in one go. And then now I've got this man wanting to take me away, to have me sectioned, and I would have no say in it. God knows what they would do. Anyway, but luckily enough, he backed off and didn't do that. And then when I was like saying, you know, if I'd gone to the priest, he would have told me I was seeing demons.
Right.
And probably thrown holy water over me.
Right.
You know, so I didn't, during those times, you didn't have anyone to go to, because we didn't have the media, you know, we didn't have Facebook or social media like we have now. And there was nowhere you could go, nowhere. There's no one you could talk to.
That's right.
And everyone I knew was you know, Roman Catholic. And, you know, you have the superstitions. So it was difficult, really, and you had to keep a lot of it to yourself. And when you were having these experiences, you were having these awful experiences, most of the time very terrifying to, you know, to a child and teenager. You just couldn't tell anyone. And even if you did, who would believe you? You know, it's a lot more obviously open now, but I do feel, as an abductee, the topic of alien abduction is still taboo. Even in the ufology, even in the UFO community, because on one hand you can see lights in the sky, but when you meet someone who's had experiences and interactions with these type of beings, you know, you get mixed reactions. I mean, a lot of the time here now in the UK, I come into contact with people that are absolutely terrified of me if they know that I'm an abductee. And the reason being is because they think if they're with you, they're going to be taken as well. But the reality is you're not going to be taken. The alien abduction program, as I like to call it, it seems like for the Greys, they're only interested in children. They take you as a child at a very young age, normally before the age of 7. And what they do is that those interactions with these particular beings, they carry on when you're a child, when you're a teenager, when you're a young adult, when you're a mature adult, and when you're almost like a retiree. They will continue throughout your life. They won't stop. They're still taking you for whatever reason. They're still taking you. But a lot of my experiences happened outside of the body. I've always been able to leave my body and travel where I want to go. Even, you know, as a child, I was easily able to move my consciousness out of my physical body. You know, the Greys call it a container. So, you know, which means, you know, like they are able to move themselves from one body to another. And so they say that we can do this as well. We're able to move from one container to another. So a lot of the time, a lot of my experiences did happen outside of the body. Sometimes when I come out of the body, they were waiting for me to take me. Literally, as you step outside of yourself, they're there waiting, and you go with them. You know, I mean, there were times when, you know, it's a difficult one, because there were times when you're having these experiences. When I was having these experiences in the 1990s, you know, they seemed to accelerate a lot more. I was so frightened of them coming to me, I would literally get a piece of furniture and put it in front of the window. You know, I mean, that's the left brain, the logical side of your brain telling you that. The right brain's to you, so that's not going to do no good. Why are you doing that? And then I would barricade my bedroom door. And in the nighttime, I would get a big knife and I'd sleep with it under my pillow or in my hand for when they come. Stab them with it. That's how terrified you are. And this is the type of feelings that you have. You're trying to protect yourself. But the you know, the sad thing about that is that you can't, because they will come and they will take you nevertheless, you know, no matter what you do. You know, there were times when I was going to run and hide somewhere, and I just knew in my mind that if I do that, they can track me, they can find me, and they do. They find you and they take you, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's like having burglar alarms on your house, and now, you know, like CCTV and security lighting, and it doesn't matter. They will still take you. They can come. They can go through this. You know, Whitley Strieber had this when he experienced this type of phenomena, his abductions, and he had at the time the, you know, most sophisticated security equipment you could buy, you know, in society. But they just turned that off. They opened his doors up and they come through, and they took him. So it's a difficult one. And who do you call, you know, when that's happening? You know, I mean, another podcaster was saying to me, you know, once when I was doing an interview, when we were talking about grey alien beings coming in and taking children from their bedrooms, and he was like saying, well, this is subjective. Well, you know, of course it's not subjective. So I then put across to him, well, let's put it this way. Let's say it's a physical intruder pulling up outside your house when it's dark, no one around, which is what the Greys like to do most, take you when it's isolated in quiet places. Let's just say they open the door, their van, they get out, and they're able to break through your security system, and they break into your house. They slowly move up the staircase. They come into your bedroom as parents, and they basically tie you up, and they put something across your mouth, and your children are in the next room. And you're going to have going through your head is terror. what are they doing to my children? Will my children be taken? Well, let's just say they take one of those children that they're interested in, and they take that child from your house, bundle them in the back of the van, slide the door shut, and they're off. When you do get free, the first thing their parents are going to do is check their children. And then what they're going to do is call the police. Well, in the situations with abductees, when they're parents of, children who are abductees, when they're taken, they got no one to go to. They can't go to any, because it's not a human doing this. It's a non-human that's acting this way, and people like to think that the Greys are, that they are benevolent. And there are different types of Greys, don't get me wrong. There are different types of beings out there, and some of them are benevolent, but a lot of them are not benevolent. A lot of them don't act in the good for human beings. They don't. A lot of the ones that I've encountered a lot in my time. Every single one of these are what I would call nefarious in their activities. And just to take a child in itself is wrong. I mean, they use screen memories to lure children towards them. So they will take an image from the child's head. So if it's like a favorite cartoon character, they'll take that image and they'll project it like in a virtual reality type image superimposed upon them, so that the child won't be afraid and they'll follow them. And it's like take them to a forest, say, and then open the door of a tree and allow that child to go in there with this particular character that they love so much. It's all nice and innocent, but then you find out the tree is a screen memory for the door of a ship. And that child's gone. For in some contexts, we call this grooming. It's not because these beings are not from this world. It doesn't matter, does it? In my eyes, they're breaking the law. They're breaking natural law. But if you're taking a child and that child doesn't have no say, it's not given its permission. Even an adult is not given permission to these beings to come and take them. They're literally breaking into your house using a different type of methodology to get into your house. But nevertheless, it's the same, by the same means. The fact that they're not from this world, well, does that matter? If they're taking a human being or a child, it's called abduction. If they're coming to you and asking your permission and you give that permission, it's not abduction, is it? It's an invitation.
True.
So we need to look at it for what it really is.
But like you said, who do you call? You can't call the police. You can't, call the government. There's a couple questions. I
have a couple too to answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Grizzly.
Right, go ahead. So a few of them, I have a lot of opportunity to speak to people that have gone through what you have gone through in your lifetime that never make it on shows.
Sure.
So first question I have, how do you feel when you talk to people that claim to have experiences like you, but while talking to them, you realize they are fabricated experiences? How does that make you feel?
Well, the thing with that is that's a good point, good question, because you do see people, in the UFO community that you do see are fabricating. They're not, I don't believe that they are genuine from the experiences I've had and others had. They do, and you do tend to get this a lot now through social media. People want to be out there and they want to be saying, and they think it's a good thing. They think you want fame and stuff like that. But it does make me angry. It makes me annoyed, and it's sad that people want this. Because genuine people that are having these experiences, they don't want them. They, why would you want to be taken? Why would you want to have these experiences happen to you? I mean, if anything, you'd want something nice to happen to you. I mean, I don't know anyone who wants to have these experiences. I mean, I have to keep my light on in my room every night. I can't turn it out. I literally have panic attacks. I have triggers, and I'm actually seeing a mental health nurse, and trying to work through this, because it's the terror that I encountered as a child. It's always stayed with me. I mean, as an adult, it's a little bit different, but as I talk to people, I say to them, it's the inner child. My inner child is still hiding in that house that I left because it's frightened, and it comes out in me as an adult. But my book is talking about those experiences from the perspective of when I was a child, and when I look back at those experiences, and reliving those emotions and the terror and the feeling of just not being able to tell anyone. There's nowhere for you to go. I mean, any genuine person, you won't want anything like that. I mean,
Right.
I have night terrors where I'm literally waking up, talking, calling for my mum, help me. And I'm shouting this out so loud, people in the house can hear it.
Oh.
And this goes on and on and on. And, I'm always calling for my mum. I'm always calling, it's not really my dad, or I'm calling for Sean, to help me, and my heart's beating really fast. My mouth's dry. And you feel really, really helpless, and even now, how can you tell? And it's really hard because
so I know you're going through it, and I'll tell you why. I look in your background. I don't see anything on your wall, nothing hanging, no pictures, no, and that tells me a lot. And I'm not going to go into the reason why. And somebody asked me, before I asked you the other questions, why would you eliminate vivid dreams, Grizzly? Yes, I'll take Prazosin to eliminate my vivid dreams, and he knows what that medicine is. And a lot of people take that because I have vivid dreams, and I'll elaborate that on another show. The other questions that came up is that are Gray's auras different from humans? And they also want to know, are these entities, aliens or whatnot, are they still interacting with you? And also, what's your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
I don't really know about the auras, to be honest, with these particular beings, but I would say a lot of them, from what I've learned, in some ways, are grown like a test tube baby in labs. So it's difficult to say whether they have a soul or not. Even, I mean, they act sometimes more like machines. They seem to be, their lack of emotion could be that they're task orientated, programmed in some ways to carry out a task, and they're just carrying it out. So they don't understand our emotions, or so they're just ignoring us in that way. So that's a possibility as well. But I did have something I was going to share with you, a memory. I had something happen the other night where I was talking to a friend online. I come over very, very sleepy. And sometimes when I have this particular offset of sleep, it's deep sleep, it means something's going to happen, or I'm going to come out of my body and something's going to happen, or I'm called somewhere to do something. But on this particular few days ago, I actually was going to walk my cat. I've got a Norwegian forest cat. It's a very large cat. And it has to be on the lead.
Very big cat.
Otherwise, otherwise it'll bring back a cow in its mouth. So come along like that with a big cow in its mouth. So but instead of that, I went to sleep. But as I fell into this deep sleep, I was actually able to see a memory, literally a memory here from this property, of an abduction that took place, which was a physical abduction of me. And so it would have been on a Monday night, because I was going out. So I actually saw myself dressed the way I am now, walking through this house into the kitchen, turning the light on, and it was late at night. I was actually going outside into the stone shed with a brown wooden door. Excuse me. And I was taking out what would be the recycling boxes, for the dustmen. And it was then, because they pick them up on the Tuesday, so it was a Monday night. And I remember being outside. It was really, I mean, around here it's literally pitch dark unless you put on security lighting. There's nothing, because it's the countryside. So and I went outside and I opened up the door, and I normally put the light on in the shed, but I didn't this time. And I knew where the recycling boxes were, and I picked them up, and I closed the door. But as I closed the door, I immediately felt the greys were there. There's a feeling of pure dread that that abductees experience. You have the feeling when they're around as well. You know, you just feel it. And I remember chucking the boxes onto the ground and rushing back to the front door, which there's a security light on just above the door, and reaching for the handle. And to the sheer horror, it was locked. But before, it wasn't, you know, it has to be locked with a key and from the inside, and it was locked. And and in this experience that I could see of me reliving this experience, I was literally going like that with the handle with my left like that and banging on the window.
Oh my God.
And shouting out, "Let me in, let me in, let me in." And I could feel, and I was having a panic attack. I could feel my mouth go dry. I could feel my heart beating. And I was going into that panic mode, and I could see them. Then there was two greys, the big eyes coming around the corner. And at that time, I've just blacked out. When I blacked out, I come back to my body. I shot up in the bed, and I was having this panic attack, and I was hyperventilating, and you know, I realized then it was actually an experience I was remembering. I don't think it was long ago, and from what I got from it, I was taken physically from this spot outside of here, but then what I've had odd occurrences of things happening. So when that happened, the next day, my cat was acting erratically outside of the property. I mean, and you know, really frightened. His ears went back, his tail was wagging, and he was looking at something where the cars are in the, you know, what would be like a large garage, outside garage. And he was running to the house 3 or 4 times, wouldn't go out, and he was looking at something behind me. And then he was coming next to me. He was really, really quiet. He wouldn't leave my, you know, my side. But then in the nighttime, there was strange banging just behind the wall of my bedroom where my bed is. You know, there's another room there. And it was like knocking, knocking, knocking. And, you know, there was nothing there. And then in the following night, we had the 2 military Chinook helicopters circling the house, very low with the red lights on. And that's not uncommon to see these because there's an air base about 2 miles away which houses these particular craft. But these ones were circling the house for up to 3 hours.
Oh my God.
In the other room, on the glass windows, the patio type windows, there was a loud bang, 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 bang as the helicopters were going round. Like, and my cat ran over to the window and he was looking at something outside, but we couldn't see what it was. And then these military helicopters, after 3 hours, they just vanished. But then today I woke up and I got a strange mark on my right ankle. And I thought at first it was a tick, you know, from the cat, because we get a lot of these in the fields. So my friend looked at it through a loop, and it's like a raised, it looks like a bubble. It's a raised mark.
Oh my God.
And it's got like something inside of it that's causing the lump. It doesn't itch, but when I went to bed last night, that wasn't there. And when I woke up today, when I was actually putting my sock on, my hand, the skin on my hand touched something on my right ankle that was raised. And I looked and it was really red. But then when my friend looked through a loop, she could see that it was basically, there was something there. But this is all ties in with all these occurrences happening after I've had this unexpected memory. So, I mean, it could be a coincidence.
Well,
but it's also open. It's open to discussion if it's linked together or not. It's just you know, unusual events happening sort of in a short space of time around the same type of phenomena.
Wow.
Oh, that's wild.
Yes, it just, wow, incredible. Before I want definitely to, how do people get your book? How are we able to get that?
Yeah, my book's available on Amazon, and it's paperback, hardcover, it's audio, and it's on Kindle.
Okay.
I am actually writing my second book, which is a follow-up.
Yes. Yeah,
The
this is
follow-up.
too much for one for one.
The
I was
follow-up
trying to
will-
get the link. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
type in Michael's name, Michael Kameron on Amazon, it'll come up hard copy, a paper, and Kindle. We'll definitely get the link out there and throw it
Yeah,
out there
we'll
for
put it
everybody.
in the final comments.
So-
In the permanent comments. Oh, this is just amazing, Mike. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you.
Grizzly, any final? Oh, I feel like I'd love to have you on the show again if you
Yeah,
have.
we got to have you back. Yeah.
This is just. Oh, there's so many more questions that I have. I want to hear you delve into
Nancy's like, Michael, you are such a brave person to even
Yes.
retell this.
Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I've actually talked to a lot of people that encounter similar what he is recounting, and a lot of people cannot come forward and express what they went through. So it's very brave of him.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
guys.
And what's your YouTube channel?
I don't have a YouTube channel at the moment. People can reach me on Facebook,
Okay.
if they want to, and that's Michael Cameron with a K, and it's double N on the end.
Oh, okay. All right.
Great.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a friend request, Michael, because so we can stay in touch, and I want to, I'll schedule you for another show if that's all right with you. That would be
sure.
Just
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. Any final thoughts or questions, Grizzly?
No, it was great. I don't know if you heard the applause or not. I don't know if I got my settings right. You did?
Yeah.
Okay. I told him before the show I was messing with my settings. So from coast to coast, around the world, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern time, we're talking about mermaids. What are we seeing out there in the depths of the ocean? So tune in for that, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you
we'll
so
talk
much.
to you soon.
Have a good night. I'll be in touch.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
There you go. I just want to make sure I got that little last bit for you.
Yep.